Welcome to the show, guys. Today I'm talking about why I'm not drafting top 5 wide receivers, including Tyreek Hill, including Cooper Kupp. Big names. Why am I not drafting them this season? I recently did a post on Instagram. If you're not following the number one Instagram verified page, go do that right now. You're missing a lot of information, a lot of fun. Go follow at Fantasy Football Counselor on Instagram. I did a post not drafting these guys, some big names. And people are like, well, how could you not draft this big name? I'm like, well, because I'm going to explain it in a podcast episode. I'm not drafting these guys. So I'm going to explain to you guys who these players are, these wide receivers specifically, and why I'm not drafting, okay? Big names. We're talking Cooper Kupp. We're talking Tyreek Hill. We're talking big top 5, top 10 wide receivers, and why I'm not going to be drafting them, why you should not be drafting them as well. All right, guys, let's get into this show, guys. I'm excited. Fantasy football is upon us. I know it's still early. We're ramping up to the NFL draft. But, guys, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys do click the subscribe button. Hit that thumbs up. Helps the channel, of course. I appreciate you guys. And, of course, get that 16-round draft solution. The draft solution will help you guys crush your leagues. Guys, there's a link here below on YouTube. Get the 16-round draft solution, the first ever and only video training, optimal players drafting each round. It will help you guys crush your draft. Okay, guys, so there's a link here below, or head on over to thefantasyfootballcounselor.com, or simply Google 16 rounds. Now, there is a discount. I may limit this discount. I don't know when I'm going to take it off, but as of right now, there is a discount. Use the promo code TUBE20. That's TUBE20 upon checkout. Save yourself 20% on the 16-round draft solution. TUBE20 and 16-round draft solution. Save yourself 20%. Go get it right now. Going to crush your leagues, okay? All right, first wide receiver I'm not going to draft. I'm going to explain why I'm not drafting these guys. I'm not just going to say, well, I'm not just going to draft Cooper Kupp. Well, let's start off with the first guy, Cooper Kupp. I'm going to explain why, okay? Very simple, all right? And you've heard me say this in many other podcast episodes before. Again, I could be wrong. Cooper Kupp can come back and have another astronomical year. He could. So let's explain it. First one, I'm not drafting Cooper Kupp. Why? Well, Joe, you sound like a broken record. I mean, he had a pinnacle season. We understand. Yes, we understand. But first and foremost, why I'm not drafting any of these wide receivers. Let me put a blanket statement over this so you guys understand. You should be going robust RB. Why? Because it's the most scarce position. So I want to get that out of the way first. So go robust RB. It's the most scarce position. Stay away from wide receivers early. That's tip number 1. You can stop watching this video if you want. But no, you want to listen because everybody's going to be harping at you. Say, well, why aren't you drafting these top wide receivers? You want reasoning, right? So first and foremost, you got to go robust RB. That's the first reason. So let's dive into Cooper Kupp, okay? Specifically for a wide receiver. This guy had an astronomical year last year, 191 targets. Nobody has 191 targets. I don't remember anyone having 191 targets in the past. I don't know how many years. I don't remember anyone ever having 191 targets. If you look at Antonio Brown's pinnacle year, he's around 166 targets. Michael Thomas didn't even hit 191 targets in his pinnacle year back in 2019. In fact, I'm going to actually pull that up. I'm going to see what Michael Thomas's pinnacle year was that particular year, because that was a good kind of, something you can work off of, right? He had 185 targets, 149 receptions, 9 touchdowns, and 1,725 yards. This is Michael Thomas in 2019 off that pinnacle year. 185 targets and only 9 touchdowns. Let's go back to Cooper Kupp. Okay. I mean, this is what I'm saying. These numbers are astronomical. Okay. 16 touchdowns. Okay. 1,947 yards. So more receiving yards, more touchdowns, more targets, beat him in every category. And remember what happened to Michael Thomas the year after. Everyone said draft Michael Thomas as the number 1 wide receiver. What I said avoid Michael Thomas as the number 1 wide receiver. Do not draft him. Don't draft him. Sure enough, he got hurt. Michael Thomas, no one's talking about him right now. But he is going to be a fantasy football sleeper this year at wide receiver, by the way, which no one's talking about. So Cooper Kupp, pinnacle year. Even Michael Thomas didn't top that. Antonio Brown back in 2015, go look at his numbers, didn't top this. Now, you're going to say, well, Joe, he's still a great receiver, and I understand he's a great receiver. I'm not saying he's going to bust. All I'm saying is that first-round pick, guys, first round, your precious first-round pick, knowing a guy is going to decline. We don't know how much he's going to decline. We know he's going to decline. 100%. He's going to decline. How much? That's a gamble that you have to be willing to take. I'm not willing to take that in the first round, knowing that the team is going to be another reason, Super Bowl hangover. They had a great season last year, right? They won the Super Bowl. Had a pinnacle anomaly year, right? Cam Akers back. Are they going to run the ball more, right? Who's going to be, I got to take a look at the NFL draft. What else they're going to do, okay? Any other moves they're going to do here in the offseason. Still a little early. But either way, I don't see Cooper Kupp having that many targets. injury possible. I think he's going to get hurt again, right? He's been hurt in the past, right? You can only be so perfect for so long before something happens. Law of averages. So Cooper Kupp's a no for me. Very expensive. I'm staying away, okay? Second guy here, I did it on the post as well, added him in here, is Davante Adams. Davante Adams, this is very simple for me. Very, very simple, okay? I'm going to give you guys some stats here because sometimes I remember years ago, Joe, you're not breaking down stats. You're just saying you're going with your gut feeling. Yes, gut feeling has a big part of this. It does. And I've done really well with gut feeling. But I also take in stats, depth chart, opportunity, quarterback, talent, youth, age, injuries. Everything calculates and computes in my head to process a result that tells me whether I should or should not draft that particular player. Davante Adams. Let's talk about Davante Adams. I love him. Is talent an issue? Absolutely not. Is age an issue? Absolutely not. Is volume an issue? Now we have a problem. Now that makes me raise an eyebrow here. I'm trying to do an eyebrow raise. Not very good. Guys, I don't think the volume is going to be there. Okay, Hunter Renfrow last year, I'm not even looking at stats because I know the stats because I study this crap all day. Hunter Renfrow, 128 targets. Not reading a teleprompter, guys. Eyes closed. 128 targets. The year before, go look it up. My eyes are closed right here. I'm not looking at anything. What was it? Waller, 145 targets in 2020. I remember this stuff, okay? Waller was, I believe, one of the top tight ends in that year, a couple years ago, 2020. I'm actually going to pull it up. I want to see where exactly he finished at tight end. I'm trying to prove a point here, okay? Waller finished in 2020 based on targets, number one in targets, just tied with Travis Kelce with 145 targets that year in 2020. In fantasy points, he was number 2 tight end, okay? In fantasy points with 278.6. He was the number 1 target for Derek Carr in 2020. In 2021, Waller didn't finish the season. In came Hunter Renfrow. Renfrow had a good season. Finished and peaked with 128 targets, as I said, right? Hunter Renfrow, where is he? Got to pull up wide receiver. I know it's 128 targets. I want to take a look at his fantasy points. 128 targets, 103 receptions, 9 touchdowns, 1,038 yards, and 259.1 PPR fantasy points for Hunter Renfrow, okay? He was being the number 1 target. And he peaked at 128 targets, okay? Let me go over this again. Waller, who finished number 2 tight end back in 2020, right? 145 target peak. Hunter Renfrow finished a top 10 wide receiver because Waller got hurt, peaked at 128 targets, okay? And Adams, who thrived last year with the Packers, had 169 targets, which brought him 11 touchdowns, 1,553 yards, and 344 fantasy points, which is great. Okay? Let me tell you something. Renfrow and Waller are still going to be on that offense, as far as I know. I mean, something could change. Maybe Waller gets hurt game 1. Maybe Waller gets traded. Maybe something happens. Maybe Hunter Renfrow breaks his leg in training camp. I don't know. All I know as of the time of this recording, okay, if I were to draft today, it's April, okay, I see Renfrow and I see Waller as guys that have rapport with Derek Carr. I'm not even crazy on Derek Carr being a great quarterback. You guys know that. I think he's overpaid at $121 million. Like, that's absolutely ludicrous for 3 years. A guy that's done nothing. He's had 2 playoff appearances, wild cards, and lost both of those. And he's got like a losing record. And he's peaked at 32 touchdowns in a season, which I think was 2015. He had, 32 touchdowns? He hasn't eclipsed 32 touchdowns passing in a season, right? So you look at a guy like Derek Carr, who I don't think is that good. You bring in Adams. You've got Renfrow, who's the number 1 receiver on that offense last year with 128 targets. You got Waller with 145 targets. In comes Davante Adams. And the sad thing about it is the mainstream consensus have Davante Adams ranked as a top 5 receiver at the moment. Okay? In standard. Okay? In PPR, they've got Davante Adams at number 4. Literally pretty much copying and pasting on the consensus. So if you are buying a magazine or drafting based on ADP, or you open up your league and you're like, okay, well, I'm ready to draft my league mates, and the platform you're using, whatever it is, Yahoo or whatever site you're using, pops up with a player, Adams is going to come up top 4, top 5, and then you're going to be like, okay, well, I'm just going to draft him because he's the best wide receiver off the board now based on ADP, which is not the case because he's in a totally different situation. Now, he could have a great season, I get it, but he's in an entirely new situation. I don't trust him. I just do not trust him getting that volume. So again, it's not so much him, it's more Derek Carr situation, volume, opportunity, targets, new offense, new rapport, everything. And I know they've had rapport in the past. Don't get me into that. he's in the NFL now, different league right now. They're together, okay? So they might have rapport in the past, but this is a different scenario, all right? So Adams, I'm not going to stay away for all the reasons I stated, and volume being one of the key ones. I'm staying away from him, okay? Not to mention rapport and all that fun other stuff that's got to happen and click on an entirely new offense, okay? So Adams is another guy I'm going to go ahead and stay away from, all right? Big name. Next guy here is Tyreek Hill. I mean, this one's an easy one for me with Tyreek Hill. I mean, it goes without saying this guy's volatile. I'm not going to spend too much time on Tyreek Hill's stats other than the fact that he is extremely volatile. Now, he finished 6th last year in PPR, which is pretty phenomenal. But when I pulled up his numbers on a game-to-game basis, he had, I'm going to count the duds here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, about 10 dud games where he absolutely crapped the bed. Did nothing. Now, he had a bunch of boom games, and that's kind of where his numbers boom. Now, if you look at week 4, he had 47.6 PPR fantasy points. In week 10, he had 27.5. In week 15, he had 32.8. Those 3 monster games, they got a couple 20-plus games in there as well. But it was, and then week 1, what do you have? I think week 1, he had 37.1. He had a good week 1 as well. So he had 4 to 5 huge games where he absolutely exploded, offensively. That's what inflated his numbers. If you have like 5 40-point games, it's going to inflate your numbers significantly, right? Then you have 10 dud games. Point I'm trying to say is he was very volatile, and that's with Pat Mahomes. Now, Pat Mahomes had a lot of targets. Kelsey was there, stuff like that. But now he's on a new offense where the quarterback is completely suspect. I don't trust Tua. I mean, Tua could be good, but he's got Waddle there who's already got rapport built up with him. Waddle had a good year, finished 13th amongst wide receivers last year, racking up, 141 targets. That's definitely going to go down with Tyreek Hill there. But again, you're looking at Jalen Waddle, who peaked at 141 targets. Is, Tyreek Hill going to get the volume that he had last year, which wasn't a lot. I mean, it was actually pretty good, 159 targets, but it wasn't like Davante Adams type targets. Now, he did drop in the ADP, so he's sitting 9th on the consensus rankings, understandably so, but still in the top 10, a guy you have to invest a second-round draft pick on, a guy that's going to be volatile. I'd say if I get value for Waddle later, I'd probably do that, but even Waddle's ranked 11th amongst the consensus. And here's what makes me sick with the consensus that can sheep his rankings. Because Waddle finished 13th last year, they're deciding, like, okay, well, he's kind of the one receiver there, and he finished like near the top 10, so we got to kind of have him up. And then they put Tyreek in there because he finished on top last year. And they've kind of both got these guys in the top 11, top 10, right? And that's just simply because of last year. They're not thinking like, okay, well, one's going to surpass the other. There's going to be volume issues. They're both going to probably fall out of the top 10. Maybe one slides in. They're not thinking logical, right? There's no logical beside this, okay? I remember this going back to 2019. Remember when Godwin had that big year, Chris Godwin? What ended up happening was the year after, Evans was the one on that roster. So they're like, okay, we got to put Evans in the top 10, but because Godwin had such a good season, we got to put Godwin in the top 10 as well because he's coming off a pinnacle year. We can't leave Godwin out because he had such a good year. But I was telling you guys not to draft Godwin. Godwin in 2020 drafts was coming off in the 2nd round, and Evans was coming off in the 3rd round. Godwin fell out of the top 10 amongst finishers in 2020, and Evans finished, I think, 11th. So they both ended up finishing, as I predicted, outside the top 10, Godwin finishing less. And I told you to avoid both, right? That would have been a waste of a 2nd and a 3rd round pick, either or. The point I'm trying to make is there's a lot of copying and pasting going on here. Waddle, Tyreek Hill. I'm just going to avoid this entire situation because there's going to be a lack of volume. There's uncertainty on who's the wide receiver 1. Waddle still could be the one based on that rapport. He could get most of the volume. He's a good wide receiver, guys. He was drafted in the 1st round. He's no joke. So you've got Waddle, you've got Tyreek Hill, you've got volatility issues with Tyreek Hill to begin with, new offense, suspect quarterback. I'm going to go ahead and stay away, and yet he's still in the top 10 without all this consideration and thought going into it, right? So this is something to think about when you're drafting. This is what I explained in 60 rounds. If this is resonating with you, if you're saying, well, Joe, this makes sense. Everyone's just going to give me a top 10 rankings and include Tyreek Hill and put Waddle just outside the top 10. That doesn't make sense to me. They're going to sell me a draft kit predicated on last year's top finishers. That's BS with a couple sleepers in there. Oh, well, they try to spice it up. Projections, analytics. Guys, don't overcomplicate things with fantasy football. Look at the depth chart. Look at the opportunity. Look at the talent. Look at the volume. Look what happened last year. Look what's happening this year. Look at the quarterback. Look at the rapport. Look at the youth. Look at the talent. Look at the past injuries, right? Predicated on that. And then you factor in the gut feeling, right? all of these play a factor. That's why I create the 16-round draft solution. It's practical. It helps you win. It omits guys that I know are going to drop off, all right? So, again, I'm not going to be drafting these guys. So, I've said a couple big names for you. I've got 2 more for you here. And I'm torn on this. There's a bunch. I'm not drafting any wide receiver in the first round pretty much. The only one I'd consider just to be off the top is probably Jamar Chase. I think there's still a lot of stealing with him. I think he's special. I think he only gets better barring any type of injury. Hopefully he stays healthy. But 2 more wide receivers I'm going to dodge here. Now, I mentioned Jefferson, but I'm not going to include him in this list. I'm obviously not going to pay high draft capital for him when I get Thielen later, who was pretty much the wide receiver 1 early on the season last year. Jefferson, obviously, I'm going to avoid. I put him on that Instagram post I did. But so let's not talk about him. But so we said Cooper Kupp, Davante Adams. Who was my other guy? Tyreek Hill. The next 2 guys I want to avoid, and one of them's got contract issues, is Deebo Samuel. Now, Deebo Samuel was on my show last year. If you guys watched, he came onto my show, and I believed in him. But Brandon Ayuk was ranked ahead of him on the consensus rankings. I said, no, Deebo's the guy. Deebo had a great season. Inflated by 8 rushing touchdowns on the 49ers. Now he's talking contract issues. He wants to get paid very high. He might hold out from some practices as we get off here in the offseason training. Both him and the other guy I'm going to talk to are holding out in practices potentially because they want to get paid big contract. Since a lot of the other wide receivers got big money, they want big money. They see Christian Kirk getting paid. They're like, I want to get paid. So you got to take a look at a guy like Davante Adams and guys like these that are getting paid. And Deebo performed really well last year. And he's like, well, Adams is getting paid. Tyreek's getting paid. Christian Kirk, who's done nothing, is getting paid. I want to get paid. Understandably so. The guy had a great year, but he had 1 good year. Mind you, that is better than Christian Kirk's ever done, right? And he got paid big. So Deebo's got a case for himself, but I'm still going to avoid him for fantasy because, again, I still think his numbers are inflated on 8 rushing touchdowns last year. I liked him as a 7th, 8th round pick where I was getting him last year for value, which I had him. And I was telling you I liked him ahead of Ayuk. So I liked him for value, and just simply go to YouTube and search Deebo Samuel Fantasy Football. You see the interview. Joseph Robert, Fantasy Football Counselor Deebo Samuel. That'll come up on YouTube. Go check it out. But Deebo Samuel, again, I liked him. I was a believer. I like him. I had him on my team last year. I'm not going to draft him this year. I'm not going to pay early draft capital for him this year. He's sitting 6th amongst wide receivers, but he was chopped liver last year. So I could pull out a magazine, guys. I've got one of those Concheapsis magazines. I could pull it out. I do pull it out on my Instagram. I mean, Ayuk was ranked ahead of Deebo Samuel. Same with Robert Woods being ranked ahead of Cooper Kupp last year. It's absolutely ludicrous. Now these guys are top 10 guys because they finished on top last year. Get the hell out of here, period. And the 5th guy here is A.J. Brown. I'm staying away. This guy finished 32nd amongst wide receivers last year. I don't trust A.J. Brown. I don't think the volume's going to be there for A.J. Brown. Another guy that's going to be possibly holding out because he wants to get paid a mega contract as well. I don't think he deserves it. He's not done anything sensational. He doesn't finish seasons. They brought in Robert Woods. It's a run-first offense with the Titans. Ryan Tannehill does not throw a lot of volume. There's 1,000 reasons. Well, not really 1,000. There's like 5 to 10 good reasons why A.J. Brown is not draftable. I'm going to stay away from him. He could have a breakout season, but I'm not paying for him because he's a top 7 wide receiver on the consensus rankings, which means when the ADP comes up, best wide receiver available on your board when you're doing your draft, you're going to see A.J. Brown's face pop up. And what are you going to do? You're going to say, best wide receiver, and draft him in the 2nd round or end of 1st, right? Early 2nd, mid 2nd, wherever he falls, 1st, 2nd round. Either way, you should be going robust RB. Let somebody else take him because there's a ton of volume at wide receiver this year. And that's the main reason. Aside from going robust RB, there is a ton of value at wide receiver this year. I cannot emphasize that enough. I want to hammer that point home, that there's a ton of wide receiver ones you can get later. Guys like Michael Pittman, guys like Terry McLaurin, guys like Amari Cooper, guys like Jerry Jeudy, guys like Elijah Moore, guys like Amon St. Brown. To name a few, never mind the rookies that are coming in this year, right? Cortland Sutton. There's so many guys. Devontae Smith. So many wide receiver ones that could emerge and become top 5, top 10 guys that are going later rounds that you can get and not invest in these guys when you know that they're going to possibly decline and you know the situation's not optimal and you know they had good years last year and they're being drafted early on predicated on last year's top finishing. So guys, wake up, right? You want to crush your league? Stop listening to the mainstream. Do not draft Cooper Kupp. Decline coming. Do not draft Deebo Samuel. He's having contract issues at the time of this recording. Maybe that gets worked out. Either way, inflated by 8 touchdowns. Elijah Mitchell's going to come in. Right? A.J. Brown, run first team. Tannehill doesn't throw a lot. I warned you guys that last year. I'm getting so angry here because last year was in the top 10, A.J. Brown. I said, listen, Ryan Tannehill was 17th amongst quarterbacks in passing attempts. A.J. Brown is not going to get that volume. Sorry, especially with Julio Jones there last year. It wasn't going to happen. Yet the mainstream continues to put him in the top 10. Julio just outside the top 10. Does that sound familiar this year with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle? Sounds familiar. How'd those guys do last year? It's about thinking outside the box, guys. And if any of this resonates with you and you're like, what, man, this makes sense, smash that thumbs up. Please leave a 5-star rating and review, guys. It really helps the channel, right? Go to iTunes if you have iPhones. 5-star rating and review. It helps the channel. And subscribe, thumbs up, and a comment below. Is this making sense to you? And get the 16-round draft solution. Because with the 16 rounds, I do two things. Number one, I help you guys win. Number two, I make a living off it. That's how I make a living, because I put my passion, my heart, and everything into it. I leave it all out there for you guys. So not only you win, so I can make a living, because that's what I do for a living, and that you guys come back next year and win again so I can continue to make a living. I'm not just going to tell you, copy and paste last year. I'm so pissed off that these guys make a living copying and pasting last year's stats, and they all have the same rankings. It's total BS, guys. Wake up. All right. So subscribe, thumbs up, guys. Wide receivers, I'm avoiding. There's 5 for you guys. And again, you should be going robust RB early on. All right. Subscribe, guys. Thank you. We'll talk soon.